BEEX project is a no-profit foundation about visual art and photography. If you want to help us, just drop a donation on buymeacoffee.com/BerlinExplorer. So welcome to this 50 minute of experience. Today I'm with Loreal Prystaj, and welcome to this podcast, Loreal.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So how is to have the name of one of my most famous product in the world?
So funny you ask that. So I was in fact named after the shampoo. My parents were going to name me Zoya originally, which was like a Ukrainian origin name, but they saw the cosmetic commercial and they're like, L'Oreal, it's so beautiful. So I have been named actually after the cosmetic.
Yeah, and it's so cool because I never saw anyone called L'Oreal. So I mean, in a way or another, I think this give to your body of work also a certain deep way to connect with everyone. Everyone know L'Oréal de Paris.
That's so funny. Yeah. I used to hate my name actually, because I was like, oh gosh, it's the cosmetic. And like when I was younger, I would have people be like, yo, what up, shampoo? And I'm like, stop calling me shampoo. But now as I've gotten older, I'm like, I really love my name actually. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really nice, really nice. I was just wondering about how to spell your surname, but now you give to me the answer, so then I know it's Prystaj and not Prystaj. It's not kind of Indian slang. But let's talk about you as a photographer in this case, in this podcast. And where I want to start is for sure to talk a bit about the experience you had during the work you did reflecting on nature.
Absolutely, reflecting on nature. So that series specifically I had done when I was on a art residency in Hämeenkyrö, Finland. And, part of my practice, may it be, from older work to newer work or whatnot, all my work stems from personal experience and my trying to understand the environment that I'm in and something that I want to learn, like something that I take from the environment that I can learn from. So while I was in Finland, I was walking around the nature, and I often start by taking photographs of myself to just kind of understand, who am I in this environment? What am I? Is there a character that's going to come out or what? So for that work, it started by just exploring the nature. And, each day I found myself needing to organize my schedule around like the weather, organize around the daylight, organize when the sun is rising, et cetera, et cetera. And, I started having this thought of like, wow, there's no such thing as my telling nature or weather to be like, hey, don't rain today because I want to do a photo shoot. I found myself constantly needing to abide by it. So this was kind of like the first thought that I had. So then I took one of the mirrors that was in the room that I was staying, and I was like, I'm curious just like out of curiosity, what would it look like if I'm holding the mirror and nature was looking at itself? And it was just, the series started with these thoughts and curiosity. And when I saw the first image taken, I was like, this is beautiful. And I think it presents exactly what I'm thinking about, of how we are these kind of small details, part of nature. And we do need to simply abide by how it exists. And as much as it is part of us, we are more part of it. And so that is how reflecting on nature began. And it's a full self-portrait series, in holding the mirror and having nature looking at itself.
Yeah, I was looking at the picture and I was asking to myself if it was a mirror or is a kind of print of made before. But yeah, then I mean, usually when I watch at work, I prefer to don't read first the description. It would be really fast, the
Mm-hmm.
and so then I would prefer first to watch the picture, asking to myself to some question, and then yeah, if I'm not really able to recognize what is, then I go to reading the description, and from that to say also and to ask you how much you think is important in photography to use a description, because you are an artist, we can say, and the photography is not the only medium you use. But how much is important? Do you think it's really important to have a description on a work?
You know, not necessarily, not necessarily at all. I think like, I mean, like, I can only speak personally about like my practice and things like that. Like, I think that you should have a description? No, not necessarily. Does it bother me if there are descriptions? No, not necessarily either. Like, I'm very open to how people want to present something, but I don't think you need a description. And I mean, for myself personally, photographically or artistically, I, when I'm making something, I rarely have a description of it while it's in its process. Like, sometimes an image just looks beautiful, and maybe that's just it. And that's it, and that's all it has to be. But something I do really enjoy is diving into why it is beautiful or what intrigues me personally about something. May it be about what somebody photographed or somebody painted, or then even in myself when I'm creating something and I'm involved in it. I don't necessarily know what I'm doing. I'm curious is often how it starts. And the description just comes almost as a part of my understanding myself and what I was trying to capture. And even though an image doesn't need a description, I find that the most successful images are the ones that do rise a question or curiosity. And then I want to know more, or a viewer wants to know more. And so therefore, if there is a question, inevitably an answer results in a description. So I think as much as images and works don't need that, for me, if they result in wanting to know more or being curious or wanting to ask a question, I think that's a very successful image or art piece.
So, and in asking question, what are the question you ask to yourself?
Well, that changes every time. It changes every time. Like if we're speaking of reflecting on nature, when I was looking at the images, I was questioning, like, what are we? Are we a blemish on earth? Are we a beauty mark on earth? Do we accentuate nature's beauty? Like when I was looking at this work specifically, those are the questions that arise. But for example, like in other works, like when I was living in New York City, and this is a very early series, I was photographing myself like in bathtubs and becoming these characters, and like in Manhattan bathtubs in New York City. And when I was photographing myself, I told myself while I was in it, like, oh, this is just my capturing like time and change in my body through a diary of bathtubs. But it's only like as I observed it more that I started asking myself, why is it that I want to put myself in a bathtub? Why is it that I never show myself as myself? I'm often a character, or I paint, I cover my appearance, my identity changes. So suddenly I started analyzing what that was about, for example. And suddenly, a few years later, when I'm no longer living in New York City and I'm living in London, I actually have answers to all of those questions where I was like, wow, I was very trapped while I was in New York City, and I felt that way. I felt I felt trapped in the structure of the concrete jungle, or whatever you want to say. I felt trapped creatively. I didn't fit in the art world, I felt at that time. And it was just like, holy moly, I was putting myself in a box, and that box was the bathtub. And I was almost like exploding outside of it and wanting to create inside of the box that I felt I was part of. So it's really interesting, I think, like that self-reflecting, that questioning, asking a lot of questions. So the questions themselves are never consistent. They're always different depending on the environment. But what is consistent is the constant self-reflection or asking questions. But the questions are always changing.
Yeah, totally. And I'm asking to myself, uh, why the subject of your body work is always you. I mean, you as a character in this case, and how is to shoot always at yourself? I mean, it's something probably I do it, but I don't do it so directly. So I don't shoot myself as myself, but I shoot myself as in connection with something is outside. And in this case, I see your work as a work on something can represent you, but in many of your project there is always you as a shape, you as a character of this body work. And this what I ask to myself is there are moments that you feel to cut off your images from your project. That's you think about that.
What do you, just so I understand, what do you mean by cut off images from your project? What do you mean by that?
I mean, in that moment that you think, okay, I'm enough to shoot about a picture of myself, and then, okay, now I need, I don't know, to shoot someone else.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of my photographing myself simply stems from I'm readily available. I am always here with myself. And because my practice is so experimental and it's very intuitive, I feel most comfortable when I am with myself photographing something, even if it's a concept that I don't really care if my identity is shown or not, but it allows me to understand what I'm personally experiencing. And I'm a firm believer that the more we are in touch with ourselves, the more that actually people outside of ourselves can connect to it, because we're all very similar at the end of the day. We are going through a human experience, and that's just on a spectrum of emotion. And that's what I have to rely on to connect with people. I find if there's always things that are more in at a certain time. I don't want to call them fads, but like there's my work sometimes doesn't even fit in because it's something that like I just want to present, but I wouldn't feel right, telling someone else's story, or I just wouldn't feel genuine. So that, I don't know if that means I will be photographing myself always. That's how I feel presently. It's been shifting a bit, like in my later works, I've been using a lot of like reappropriating images. I've used my mom in a lot of works, and I don't necessarily actually feel the need to photograph myself all the time recently. Like I've been expanding into sculptural works, so taking live casts of like body and making them into bronze or pewter, which is like a silvery kind of metal, or plaster. And a lot of those are, in my mind, also like a photograph, and I take body casts of people that are not me. So like the photo, a live cast would take like a fragment or a snapshot or a mold of another person's body. And so that's what I've been presently working in recently. So I've kind of geared away a bit from the self-portraiture in that sense. But as for the archive of my photographic practice, it's predominantly self-portraiture. And I think that just has a lot to do with my wanting to learn about myself and being readily available.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to our podcast. Learn more about our project at allmylinks.com/BerlinExplorer or visit our Instagram and follow BerlinExplorer project. Ayo, 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 BEEX project is a no-profit foundation about visual art and photography. If you want to help us, just drop a donation on buymeacoffee.com/BerlinExplorer. And I'm still on the topic because, yeah, as we said, the questions are many and the answer can be much more. My question about that is, how do you can describe the intimacy is in your work? Do you think your work show in a way a level of intimacy is really higher, or it's I don't know. I'm asking to you what kind of intimacy do you feel it to give to others showing that picture? So instead of the things that you are the subject of this work, and you are the subject 100%, we can say, of this work. So there are construction of rooms in some cases, construction of light, and then you have to set the camera somewhere, because to take a picture of yourself, you have to calculate, you have to try, you have to, in a way, you cannot say, okay, now I do it a picture, so then you take the picture with the mind and shoot, and you know what you are shooting. So need a bit more time to really create the right picture for you. Do you think this, in a way, give then the right intimacy?
So in a sense, do you mean like, do you think like, are you asking because my process is with myself and I'm setting up everything, therefore are my images, do they have like an intimate part to them? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I think that my work does present something intimate, especially in the later works. I think my earlier works, which for example would include like the series I did in bathtubs, for example. I had my undergrad, I was going to a fashion university, and I think I was very influenced by like fine, refined, polished, beautiful imagery that didn't show too much like flaw or trial or error. They were very controlled images, where I look at them now and they're definitely intimate, but they kind of lack a vulnerability, or maybe they're still kind of powerful. But I think like as my practice has progressed, I think that intimacy comes from being more vulnerable in front of the camera, which in a way actually creates, it's just like they become more powerful when I find, more vulnerable. And I think that's because people can connect to vulnerability, or at least want to. So yeah, I definitely think depending on the images we're looking at, they can be seen as very intimate. And I say that depending on the images we're looking at, because I really do feel like an image maker all the time. So even my research can be taking photographs, even though it might not be the end result. They too can be very refined. And I think that stems from having gone to a fashion school, where I think I just have my eye is often looking for things that are refined, even if it isn't the end result. But the end result, especially in recent works that have to do with my being in the domestic space, or my going back home and photographing myself within that sphere, I think are very intimate in presenting that vulnerability.
Yeah, yeah, in a way, yeah, for sure. In another way, I watch at your photograph, as you know, I really like your photograph, but there is something I feel is missed, and I ask to myself, who are you for real? I mean, it's a bit provocatory, I think, this question, but I mean, what I touch in your photograph is for sure a lot of emotion, a lot that child part of you, that to discover the many ways you can create something, all the influences, all the experience you had. In your life, so you take a lot from the world outside, and then in the world inside of you, you create a lot of beautiful images. And but I just stop at images, and I watch them, and I think about, okay, and with the person every day is alive. I mean, the picture represents the moment of creation. Something is created for to be like that, to be like that, or not to be like that, but to be similar to what you was thinking. And I ask to myself, okay, who is the photographer or the person in general is behind these pictures? I mean, instead of the things that you are most of the time the subject of this picture, I ask much more to myself that question then.
Yeah, so you're questioning that and seeing the work. It's hard to, as a viewer, to define who is the artist. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, this it's a kind of we take an example, no? I just take my phone, the iPhone, no, I have in my hand, but the same iPhone probably was designed from just one person. It's assembled from another person, and probably the person is doing the update every month is different, and go on, okay? And this is something else I ask to myself: who are the people are behind that piece of art? Because yeah, in this case, you produce piece of art, and now going really a bit more deep inside of your work. I watch the picture. I think, okay, they are really nice. They're really nice aesthetically. I really like a lot. But during I talk with you, this is the second talk I have with you. I see you in this picture, but the more that I saw of you, I don't see in the picture. And that's to myself, okay, I will see who are you in your photograph. Probably, I don't know, I cannot define now from the picture you have. I don't know, it's
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. It's an interesting question, and you get me thinking also, because you just said something, and I think I've coined this, like, oh, they're self-portraiture, and I think it's because I've been asked that question all the time, that I almost say, like, I now say they're self-portraiture. But if you asked me 5 years ago, tell us about your work, my language used to be, so I use myself as a character, I use myself as a form, I use myself as this, but don't mistake it as self-portrait because I feel they're separate of me. But it's so interesting because now I'm reflecting that I feel that response is actually far more genuine, like of I'm responding to something, but when I'm like right now I'm looking at, I have the bathtub tiles. Look, I'm looking at them right now
Yeah.
because they're just like tiles in our kitchen. And I look at them and I'm actually like, I don't see myself. I don't see myself. I see more of a form becoming part of something. But because I am the photographer, I still go through that asking myself, why did I photograph myself like that? Even though I might not associate me in the image. I think I've just gone straight for saying self-portraiture because for like, you know, nearly 10 years, people are like, so tell us about your self-portraiture. And my response would always be like, well, I don't see it like that. So it's interesting to find myself kind of being like, I do self-portraiture now. When I never saw it that way originally. It's just, maybe you hear it for you hear something for years and years that you almost believe it all of a sudden. So you're now asking me something that I'm self-reflecting on this, that I've always, you know, the origins of my photographing myself stems from simply being readily available. When I look at the images, going back to like just the basics of my starting to photograph myself, I would actually never say they were self-portraits. I would always say I photograph myself as a character, a form, a subject, but don't mistaken this as self-portraiture. And when I would say this, I would get the response, well, it's you, so it's a self-portrait. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. So it's interesting you're asking this now because, you know, when I look at them, I don't necessarily see me, but I do recognize chapters I was personally going through that elicited these type of imagery.
But it's not, I mean, I'm sure that you are not shooting yourself. This is the point. That's why I'm asking you before and I questioning myself. The point is totally this is I don't feel that you shoot yourself. But yeah, I had to do a series of questions before to go to this point because yeah, the person I watch now and I watched last time is not the same person. Is in the pictures, and yeah, in a micro part of our micro world, and in every micro world we have in our life, it's you. But in another way, it's not you. And this come to the point to asking to myself, probably I would love to see a work or a body work as no body work, as no storyline, as no construction, and this raw and sometimes also can be cruel to showing you as a human in this case and as an artist. And thanks to myself then in this production of 100 bathtub pictures, if you did some kind of backstage, because this will be my best curiosity to see what is behind. And yeah, the images are so cool, are so amazing, are so crazy in some cases, showing a lot of different part of yourself. But what I don't see is they don't show you as I think the most powerful part is when you create the stuff and not when you finalize the images. And I said, fuck, I wanted to see that part.
Yeah, you're bringing up very interesting points. I definitely have like behind the scenes of, for example, that is much older work. But I think, you know, I'm still on a journey of even learning about myself as an artist. Like here I am doing more installation work lately and sculptural pieces and sound pieces, you know, rather than photographic, even though the photography can enter that space. So it's interesting from my looking at, you know, especially older works of photography where it's having come from a fashion school, like it was very refined and very cleaned. And I want to keep using this word of control. I think that like in my work, there is quite a control, and may it be on presentation, may it be on imagery, where it's like, quite frankly, in life, or like on day-to-day life, I'm very like relaxed and chilled. But when it comes to like producing something, I do create this very like controlled, refined, even if it is a little more raw in my later career of photography, it still is something that like I want to get that perfect shot. And so even if it is coming from a place of vulnerability, or presenting something or something that I'm thinking about, it's it still has that control. And I wonder if that's something that just as a creative, and I feel like all of us should look at ourselves and want to grow. That's something I do want to grow out of a bit, not being so controlling in the end results, and being dare I say, maybe applying more of how I am in my day-to-day life into my artwork. It's very interesting. You're making me think.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. Learn more about our project at allmylinks.com/BerlinExplorer, or visit our Instagram and follow BerlinExplorer project.
Ayo, 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 ayo,
BEEX project is a no-profit foundation about visual art and photography. If you want to help us, just drop a donation on buymeacoffee.com/BerlinExplorer.
About even my practice right now.
That's the point of the podcast. I think it's you start to doing 50 minutes of podcast of experience with someone, and from 50 minutes I cannot really say, okay, there are 50 minutes. Fuck, I have to stop. Sorry, Loreal, I have to stop you. I have to cut you off now. It's like always breaking the rules in a way.
Yeah, I love it. I love that. I just want to say thank you for, challenging, or not, I don't even want to say challenging, but asking a question that kind of maybe contradicted something I was saying. Granted, I'm a firm believer in all the things I was saying, but you're questioning, like, do you really see yourself in these images when I say self-portraiture? And you've just brought me back to like the base of how I thought about my work, like nearly 10 years ago, that it's now making me think, why is it that I just instantly would say something like, oh, these are self-portraits, when I had never in the beginning of my presenting work. And
so let's keep a challenge now. I'm thinking about, I challenge you now, and I say you, okay, let's do it a publication, uncut, really uncut, doing a picture during these months without constructing anything, just taking picture, and we put down something and we see what how we challenge in a way your way to work, because I really feel that you could do it raw picture really good, because you have when you construct a picture, you do it really good. So then I think it's there. I mean, in a way or another, also if you don't construct a picture, they are already constructed inside of your mind. So automatically, when you will take the camera in your hand, and also even if you don't watch inside, you will have the straight line, and you will have a kind of a perspective, and this is something I'm curious about. And another thing I'm really curious about is how would you portray the life, for example, with your partner? This is another thing I think it's
yeah, absolutely. I That is that's a great question. How would I portray it? And, instead of, I'd maybe want to switch those words instead of wondering how would I portray it? Because portrayal means you're presenting a portrayal of something. But how would I just capture our everyday or a moment, or how you're even asking in the beginning, like the intimacy or something. This is something I must think about. But it's so funny you're asking all these questions because I was recently, reflecting on my photographing myself in these certain constructs. And when I say constructs, I'm talking like, let's start from the bathtub. Let's move to like, I did things in my house where I was like disrupting things, of making myself into a lampshade. I'm not sure if you saw that. Where like, no pun intended, but not pun, but my cat is looking in the camera. And so is I'm showing my butt to the camera and my pussy, if you will.
Yeah, that's awesome. This picture was great. For example, I also asked to myself, how did you put your fucking cat there without...
Yeah, but what's interesting is just going off of what you're saying, but just going back to, for example, like works that I was doing, like from the bathtub to like going to my home in New York, upstate New York, which is up north from New York City, and disrupting those environments. What's interesting is when I'm done with it, I don't feel a need to do it. So when I look at the bathtubs, I'm just like, I don't feel a need to do that ever again. And because I don't feel trapped, for example. Or like when I was looking like at the black and white image where my cat is there and I'm, facing the camera, and we are both looking into the lens of the camera. People were like, wow, you got to go in this direction. It's great. And I'll have to say, during that phase, I was dealing with my own anxieties of, for example, like the idea of getting stuck in a suburban environment. Like I could never, and I'm not dealing with those anxieties anymore. So I don't feel like capturing it, as a matter of fact. Like I don't need to do that. And it's interesting because I'm always presenting in like a really beautiful, refined way, like my own like anxieties or things that I was dealing with, where it's like when you're saying, oh, capture, have you thought about capturing yourself with your partner? This is a place that actually brings me such joy. And I was thinking to myself, why don't I ever capture just like the things that are, that I love life, as a matter of fact, and I love the people that surround me. And I'm always making these very controlled images that are often about my analyzing something that maybe I fear or I feel trapped in or I have anxieties about. And they end up like, I'm like almost spewing it out in a beautiful, refined image, like once again, that is very controlled. And when you mentioned just like your partner, it's like, it's a space that I feel very free and very joyful. And I'm very curious, why haven't I photographed these type of things? Or like,
well, after this podcast, you will set all the house a live show 24 hour, putting camera everywhere, GoPro everywhere, and filming and taking picture of everything happen. And the results, what else is the results? This is what I love, my point of view, because I also was thinking like you in the past, and I was also constructing some images, and I was not, and I was really frustrated then because I was not able to take the picture like I had in my mind. And then I understood that photography is not, will never construct the images I have in my mind, because the images I have in my mind, they are a mix of different influences, different dream, and even sometimes stuff you cannot really create. I know, for example, years ago, I was really paranoid, addicted to understand how to catch the smell of something. I studied a lot about that, but even if I recreate this smell, I could never recreate that moment that really rarely in your life that you go out from a door and you smell something, connect you to something else happened like when you was 2 years old.
Like that nostalgic, kind of smell, or like that brings you to childhood.
And then you have just to live that moment. You have to be in that moment. You cannot create some kind of moment. And then I started to appreciate to photography as photography is a moment just to take, to accumulate. And then the most beautiful part for me is when you select, because you are there. You can watch your story as your story, or even passing a lot of years, you can be totally distant from this story and seeing more. And from this moment to another, going to create a totally different story, and then creating something that other people see in a totally different way from you. And this create words, create way to think, creates provocation, creates a lot of different emotion, touch us. And I admire that you are able to construct the images. But I don't know, your partner seems so fucking friendly. I will love to see what is your life with him.
Absolutely. It's wonderful. It's interesting of just what you're saying of, how do you present these ideas or these experiences or these moments, and like, it's so hard to do because you can see it and you can feel it emotionally and you can smell it, you can taste it, I don't know, in your mind, in your being, but it can be difficult to like portray that, for example, in an image. And I like, as an artist or as a creative or whatever words you want to apply to making art or taking photos, it's just I feel like I have so much work, and it's crazy because I still feel so young as a creative, because I still haven't found I still haven't found that sweet spot of the description that you just said, the description of portraying exactly what you are feeling, you're smelling, you're tasting, you're thinking. I have not found yet how fully to do that. And I think that is, for me, photography in the beginning of my career. And I say that in the beginning because I see myself being an artist until the day I die. It's like oxygen. There's no other way of doing it. You can't live without oxygen. I can't breathe without creating each day. And it's interesting where my practice, I'm starting to, the past couple of years, or let's just say year and a half, I've seen it expand into making spaces. So even maybe I have like a photograph in that space, but I want spaces that people can walk through. And this is where like my practice is suddenly changing into installation a bit, or where I'm applying like sculptural pieces or elements that there are smells in the spaces that you can create. And I feel as though each day I'm getting closer and closer to the way that I want to present an idea or concept or an intimate moment. But it's so interesting because my portfolio or archive at this point is predominantly photographic, but I feel such a shift in my mind and how I want to present things. And it's not at all to discredit photography, because that's always my base and it's what I've done predominantly. But in everything that you were just describing, and how do you get closer to present that thing that you want to present, I have found myself like wanting more to build spaces that people can experience 3-dimensionally rather than two-dimensionally by looking at a photograph. And this is something very new. This is something very new that I've entered. But it excites me. It excites me. I think like as artists, we need to always, I feel once we feel we really know ourselves, it becomes stale. I think we have to strive to want to dig deeper, and why is it that we're doing this, or how do I do this? Or I think that striving and that curiosity should never leave. So and if it does, I think that's when the stale part happens, or stagnance, and or becoming complacent. But you're planting seeds in my head. I'm questioning now. Why have I not?
Why?
Things that bring joy.
Because now our podcast will be done, but this creates the moment and the occasion to make another podcast to talk about what my seeds.
Emiliano, I feel like we should keep talking, but are you telling me we're running out of time?
So I thank you a lot for this another really nice talk with you. And this was Loreal de Paris. No, this was Loreal Prystaj. And her work will be in the link in the description. And I hope you appreciate this 50-minute in 5 parts of experience.
You know, Emiliano, I appreciate it more than my words can express. I appreciate your asking questions that really have gotten me, you know, just simply thinking about my own practice, and irrelevant to practice, but just, you know, why is it that I do what I am doing? And this is, you know, we're always asked so many questions about the work. I really appreciate your asking. I really feel like you were asking me questions, irrelevant of the work, but about me and why. And so I thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for listening to our podcast. Learn more about our project at allmylinks.com/BerlinExplorer, or visit our Instagram and follow BerlinExplorer project.